Hi friends, welcome to another YouTube video. Today I want to talk about death. Now sorry if I sound a little bit congested. I did catch a cold recently, but I'm almost over it. Now, death, it happens to all of us, and it happens to everything. Our tortoises, our pets. So I just want to talk about death in tortoises in general. It seems unlikely because tortoises can live a very long time. There's a tortoise named Jonathan, and he's 191, and he's an Aldabra tortoise. Now, um, death in tortoises can be caused by many things, and right here I have a skeleton of the tortoise. This is just the shell. So this right here, this is just pure bone. So this is what the shell is made out of, pure bone, and you can see the plastron and everything, and it's connected. So that's why the inside of the tortoise, they can't come out of their shell because they are part of the shell. So you can see this vertebrae, the spine, goes all the way up here, all the way down to their back, all the way coming out to their tail. Um, and you can see this was a male concave plastron, a very pronounced gular scoop. And you can see this was a full-grown male. He has the flaring here, and he has the shield here. But this is just what a tortoise shell looks like when the tortoise is gone, and um, this is the last remains of the tortoise. There's fossils of these parts of the shell of ancient tortoises and turtles, and you can see where there's different parts of it, and then on top, the keratin scutes, which are the scutes made out of keratin, they go on top of here and grow as the tortoises age it. So I'm gonna bring out a live tortoise, Meow Mix, and I'm gonna show you the difference. So this is Meow Mix. She's my female Russian tortoise, and you guys have met her before in my video about Russian tortoises. Now she is a female, probably in her teens. She does have metabolic bone disease. You can see her scutes are all piled up in the middle, and she is a bit stunted in growth. She was fed cat food, Meow Mix cat food. I did have to trim her beak up a little bit here and her nails because her beak was all the way down to here. So now the tortoise shell, see how it's hard? So it's pure bone. And this colorful part, this is keratin scoop. Now, if you can see, this is her growth rings. This is what we call growth rings, these little lines. Now, people think that you can count them like a tree, a growth rings on a tree, and determine the age, but you can't because tortoises can put on multiple growth rings in a year, especially babies. And because they can put on multiple a year, so if we just try to count this, she would be like 50 years old. And I know she's not 50 years old. So you can obviously see she's a bit dry. It's finally sunny. She's been playing around in the dirt. But tortoises typically, if they do die, I had a male Russian tortoise named Bruno. You guys, if you follow me on my Instagram, you've seen him before. Now Bruno, he passed away in June of this year, and he died of a respiratory infection, which is common in Russian tortoises. Now, I'm not sure if he was wild caught or bred, but I'm pretty sure he was captive bred. But in wild caught specimens, which a lot of Russian tortoises are caught from the wild, sadly still, and they're imported in droves, and they have a lot of diseases that come along with them, and they don't even last a month sometimes. That's one thing about reptiles is that 90% of the time when you go from a pet store, they're most likely from the wild, which is super sad because they're taking out their natural habitat. Now, in their natural habitat, they would be living a very long time, and they wouldn't have the diseases they come with when they're in the store because they're pretty much just stacked up on each other and they're climbing over each other. They're pooping on each other, peeing on each other, so they get diseases and they get colds. Yes, tortoises can catch colds like us, and but their cold is kind of different. Most of the time, it's just too much moisture, and it could be along with a respiratory infection. Of course, they'll have some fluid coming out of their nose and their mouth, and another way is that they're not going to be able to lift themselves up a lot. Now, if we take a look here, I showed you guys the shell, right? It was empty on the inside. You can see. Take a look right behind her arm. See this? You see how the skin is connected to the shell? So that's normal because right here on the shell, if you look, this is where the skin would be connected. And if this was a male the males will just poke straight through sometimes, and then that would end up causing an infection in the other male, and the males will die like that. So tortoises end up unaliving each other, and because of that, that's natural, that's normal. But most of the time, if it's a death, sometimes you'll most likely have infections, wounds. Most of the time, predators, like her predators, would be birds when she's young, especially if she's out in the open, and mammals. And the main cause of death is going to be predators in the wild. I'm not sure what predators they have where Russian tortoises come from, but definitely birds, big birds of prey. See, just take a look. This is Meowmix's kid. This is Pavel. And Pavel, if Meowmix was this size in the wild, they have to survive. So you can obviously see they're so tiny. So one way they do to survive, they blend in. You see how dark that shell is? So they blend in with the dirt, and they have these big, powerful legs, even as babies, so they can dig down and protect themselves. But sometimes another way of death is that they can also collapse. The burrow can collapse in on them if the dirt isn't right, and also like I said, tortoises do hurt each other, especially males, and females can also get hurt from males because males will have the tendency to bite their legs during courtship, and most of the time babies, sometimes they don't always survive, sometimes they never survive in some cases, sometimes the weather's too bad, or just in time a predator digs up the nest. So sometimes when these females will be laying eggs, um, especially with other turtles too and tortoises, birds will come and pluck the eggs as they're laying, and sometimes larger predators, they'll dig up the nests and take all the eggs, which reduces the amount of possible babies there could be. So those are multiple ways tortoise dies. But in captivity, you're looking at respiratory infections, diseases if it's wild caught. There's many diseases that they catch from each other, especially if they're different species, and also pyramiding. Pyramiding and metabolic bone disease shorten lifespans. So you can see how closed up her scutes are compared to her baby right here. Let's just take a look. Look how uniform those scutes are compared to this, right? You see how her scutes are all bunched up together, while little Pavel here, her scutes are all nice and uniform, aligned with each other. So, because of this, her lifespan may be shortened because she does have metabolic bone disease. I'm not sure what's going on internally, because especially bad cases of metabolic bone disease with high pyramiding and saddleback shape shells, they can cause problems on the lungs because the lungs are located on the top, and especially on the kidneys too, especially if they're getting fed the wrong diet. But most of the time, if you want to have your tortoise live a very long time, keep humidity high as a baby to get this nice smooth shell. Um, Allow calcium. You can see on Pavel's face right here. See that calcium powder? She's been eating some calcium. But you want to have calcium accessible because that's what gets this nice hard shell. Um, and then you also want good lighting, accessibility to outdoor natural sun, and then you should in turn have a really healthy baby with exceptionally the right diet. So in the past 3 to 5 years, I've had a whole lot of tortoises. Only two have passed. One was a baby leopard tortoise of ours. So now instead of 12, we have 11, sadly. I'm not sure how she died. It seemed that she died because of some sort of infection she had. I don't know what it was. Now, if you take a look at this video shows the baby leopard tortoise, the one that I lost. You can see that it has a concave flash, in which it shouldn't. And it could have died from probably infection, I believe. But it seems to be that this baby just succumbed to something that was very bad. But no, this happens. But you can see it does have concave flashing, which is not normal in babies and should never be normal. And its flashing was very soft, so it could have been a low calcium deficiency or a respiratory infection. Now, the life expectancy from all the way from a hatchling all the way to death is roughly 100 years. Tortoises can live more than 100 years. Right now, most of my tortoises are in their teens. I have one tortoise that is probably almost 30, which is Boris, the male Russian tortoise that you guys have met before. Um, and if we just take a look, this is the last remains. Tortoises have been here longer than the dinosaurs have been. So if you can see, they've pretty much been unchanged for all they've been on this earth, which means they're doing something right. And they said, in evolution, this is going to work out. They never changed it. They just adapted to where they live and the color differences, of course. But they all have a shell, right? Rock solid. Um, Nothing can really get through this. And some turtles, like box turtles, have adapted a hinge right on the plastron to protect themselves. And that's a muscle right here, muscle tissue. So they can close up, protect their most important parts, like their head. And then, of course, this shell, when they're adults, it's going to be very hard. But as babies, it's still going to be soft. Pavel's very small, so her shell's still very pliable. Um, but they're doing well. But that's mainly it when it comes to death in tortoises. You always do your research. Try not to get a wild caught if you can. Ask where you buy your tortoises from if they're wild caught. If they are wild caught, do your best, get them to the vet. Sometimes they don't live longer than a month. That's just the sad fate for them because they're brought into droves into the U.S. So it's very important that you try to get captive bred like little Pavel here because they're just much more healthier in general because you'll have a lifelong friend if you do everything right with a captive bred tortoise because they're already socialized around people and they're born and they're taken care of correctly, and even in the wild they're healthy overall, but it's just when they're brought together they don't do well under stress. Even though how hardy tortoises are, they just don't do well in general because that's just one thing humans have done that's disrupting everything. Anyways, that was just most of the things that I wanted to go over about the most common causes of death, different things, and how tortoises naturally protect themselves. So that's what I want to talk about in today's video, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one.